think there are various challenges. One is actually within their congregations. It's often very difficult for sisters who have the capacity for higher studies in theology to get permission to do those higher studies. There is money available, that's for sure. So there is funding available from the UISG and from other entities. But sometimes religious congregations are so desperate for younger people to cover other needs, to be headmistresses of a school or to be the leader of a community, that they think that doing theology is something abstract, is a waste of time. It's anything but a waste of time. The renewal of religious life is going to come from people who have a real understanding of the theological underpinnings of religious life. This doesn't mean that they have to sit there reading heavy-duty theological papers to their sisters. Everybody would just fall asleep. But we need to be doing the renewal of religious life from within the very rich theology of religious life that comes from the various disciplines. And in this respect, it would be wonderful if the leaders of religious congregations could recognise the need for this and could actually sponsor and support the sisters who are coming up through the ranks, who have the capacity for this kind of study. So that's the internal problem. The external challenge is the same as it is for women theologians all around the world, is to be taken seriously in a theological world that is very often constructed by men, for men, and predicated on men's experience. Now, we've been working today on a wonderful document that's come from the Leadership Conference of Religious of India called It's High Time. It's a really brave and really groundbreaking document that looks at the various challenges that are facing women religious in India. But I would have to say, from my experience of working with religious all around the world, these are the same problems that are being faced by women religious in various parts of the world, dealing with hierarchy, dealing with patriarchy, dealing with men in the church who see women religious as useful, cheap labour, but not seeing them as having a voice and an experience that really counts. So for women theologians and for sisters who are theologians, it's about finding a space within the theological marketplace, as it were, with which to put out their wares, with which to be able to say, this is what's important. And it's not just important for women religious. What we are seeing is a gift also to the male religious. And because it's a gift to religious life, it's a gift to the church as a whole. We represent the charisms that are given to the wider church through religious life. But this is about the enrichment of the church, the enrichment of religious life altogether through the work of the women religious who are theologians. Oh gosh, it's so exciting to be part of a global conversation. And the thing about my work is I never know where it's going to take me. So last week I was working with a Carmelite monastery in rural Norfolk in England. But prior to that, I was working with sisters across the continent of Latin America. Before that, I was working with sisters in Romania. I've been working with Benedictine monks from all around the world. I've been working with sisters in the Congo and in Australia. You never know where this job is going to take you. But what is clear to me, and it's really clear, the Holy Spirit is speaking really clearly to religious right across the world at this time. I've been very privileged with my colleague Maria Simperman to be part of the team that is redacting the synod response from the religious leaderships all around the world. What we were struck by was the level of consensus and synthesis in the response from religious leaderships, both male and female, as it happens, from every continent in the world. It is clear that the Holy Spirit is speaking to us. The question is, are we ready to listen? Are we ready to respond? I think there are some questions that are external, as it were, to religious life, and some that are internal. I think the biggest question externally, and I would see that as somebody who is an ecclesiologist, is what kind of church are we trying to build? And how can we as religious help to build it? What kind of a voice do we want to have within the church? And that covers things like the role of women in the church, the role of laity in the church. We very often, at the ground level, are reaching out, are working with the most excluded, the most marginalised. How do we as religious learn from the voices of the marginalised, learn from the teaching that the marginalised have to offer and to challenge to the church? And how are we feeding back these messages to those who are, as it were, in charge of the hierarchical structure of the church? So that's one question. I think the other question is, what kind of religious life do we want to be building in the future? And how do we not only look at religious life objectively from the outside, as it were, but how do we self-critique from the inside? There certainly is a very loud and very clear question coming up about the structures of leadership. How do we encourage a more synodal view of religious life that is about the participation of ordinary members, of the younger members, of members from parts of the world perhaps that haven't had a strong voice in the church? How do we incorporate all of this as part of our ongoing discernment of what the Spirit is saying to the churches in these days?